Yes, we're supposed to be for a 70% tax rate on the wealthy.
We should triple the amount of money we spend for Title I schools.
Yes, we're supposed to be for free college, free public college for our young people.
There should be free community college.
I also believe in free college.
I believe that we must make public colleges and universities tuition free.
I've called for a doubling of the earned income tax credit, raising the minimum wage, and creating paid family leave.
They want to know how we're going to put food on their table.
We'd have to make sure, ultimately, that we provide not just shelter, but food, clothing, and access to medical care.
Better child care for everyone in this country.
$15 minimum wage, paid sick days, pre-K for all.
The Democratic Party should be on the side of reparations for slavery.
And giving the American family all that they need to get through the end of the month in a way that allows them to prosper.
Your signature policy is to give every adult in the United States $1,000 a month, no questions asked.
That's right.
I think that's like $3.2 trillion a year. How would you do that?
Sorry?
How would you do that?
If we had a value-added tax at even half the European level, it would generate over $800 billion in new revenue.
This is the generation that will solve student loan debt.
I'd use Pell Grants. I'd double them from $6,000 to $12,000 a year and expand it to the number of families that get covered.
Eliminate student debt.
For every family that is making less than $100,000 a year, they will receive a tax credit that they can collect up to $500 a month.
We should be in a position where we do not have anyone have to pay back a student debt when they get out. They're making less than $25,000 a year.
And we do that by placing a tax on Wall Street.
We should give everyone in this country health care as a basic human right for free.
We need to get to universal health care. I believe the way to do that is by finishing the work we started with Obamacare.
We have got to pass a Medicare-for-all single-payer system.
Getting to guaranteed, high-quality, universal health care as quickly and surely as possible has to be our goal.
We will have Medicare for all.
Yes, I'm with Bernie on Medicare for all.
I believe we need to get to universal health care as a right and not a privilege to single payer.
People who have health care under Medicare for all will have no premiums, no deductibles, no co-payments, no out-of-pocket expenses.
Just the value gains from having a stronger, healthier, mentally healthier population would increase GDP by $700 billion.
There's plenty of money in this world. There's plenty of money in this country. It's just in the wrong hands.
This is the generation that will end climate chaos.
It's a climate crisis. It represents an existential threat to us as a species.
We need aggressive and ambitious measures. It's why we need to do a carbon tax.
I would immediately join the Paris Climate Accord.
Well, I share the sense of urgency. I'm a scientist, so I recognize that we're within 10 or 12 years of actually, suffering irreversible damage.
I support a Green New Deal. It is why I believe on day one and as president will re-enter us in the Paris Agreement.
This is a climate crisis, an emergency, and it is our last chance.
We have 12 years before there is irreparable damage to this planet.
We're going to have a Green New Deal. We're going to create millions of jobs. We're going to do this within the next 12 years.
Our existential threat is climate change.
We need to go tenfold in our research and development on green energy.
Closing coal plants, replacing them with wind, solar, and batteries.
Paying farmers for the environmental services that they want to provide.
All the economists agree that a carbon pricing mechanism works.
I would immediately insist that we, in fact, build 500,000 recharging stations throughout the United States of America so that we can go to a full electric vehicle future by the year 2020, or by the year 2030.
We in our administration are going to fund resiliency in those communities, in Miami, in Houston, Texas, those places that are on the front lines of climate change today.
Right here in Florida, they're talking about sea level rise. Well, in Indiana, I had to activate the Emergency Operations Center of our city twice.
We can save ourselves. We can save our children. We can save our grandchildren. And we can save literally the life on this planet.
We have got to change the center of gravity.
We're going to be able to keep this planet from warming another 2 degrees.
There was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
My grandmother came here when she was 7 years old as an immigrant from Mexico.
My mom and her parents came to the United States to rebuild their shattered lives.
My family, my Family didn't have the money for a college application.
I have the experience of being in a marriage that exists by the grace of a single vote on the U.S. Supreme Court.
I was the first in my family to go to college and have student loan debt.
My dad served in the Pacific in World War II, had half his leg blown off.
I had prostate cancer recently.
I was 6 years old when a presidential candidate came to the California Democratic Convention and said, it's time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans. That candidate was then Senator Joe Biden.
We need a nominee who has the ability to prosecute.
I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor.
We shouldn't have 11 million undocumented people with no pathway to citizenship.
Free dreamers forever from any fear of deportation by making them U.S. citizens.
People that are here on temporary protected status can stay and remain here.
Put undocumented immigrants, as long as they haven't committed a serious crime, on a pathway to citizenship.
We open our hearts to the stranger.
They, in fact, contribute to the well-being of the country, but they also, for example, they've increased the lifespan of Social Security because they have a job, they're paying a Social Security tax.
There are undocumented immigrants in my community who they pay sales taxes, they pay property taxes.
That's what they're doing.
I would have a community-based treatment center where asylum seekers are given lawyers.
It gives a path to citizenship for people who can become citizens.
The Obama-Biden administration deported more than 3 million Americans. My question to you is, if an individual is living in the United States of America without documents and that is his only offense, should that person be deported?
No.
Depending if they committed a major crime, they should be deported. And the president was left in his, President Obama, I think, did a heck of a job. To compare him to what this guy's doing is absolutely, I find, close to immoral.
This president, though, for immigrants, there's nothing he will not do to separate a family, cage a child, or erase their existence.
We will work to make sure everyone can vote.
We have to make sure that ICE is completely reformed.
We should be making sure we change the circumstance, as we did, why they would leave in the first place.
We need to start having bold agendas on guns.
Ending the sales of assault weapons into our communities.
There are weapons that have absolutely no place in American cities or neighborhoods in peacetime.
Universal background checks, where you close every loophole.
You should need a license to buy and own a firearm.
I ran on a platform of banning assault weapons and, in fact, lost that race for Congress. I have a D- voting record from the NRA.
So if you're talking about ending gun violence, it's the greed of the NRA and the gun manufacturers that make any progress impossible.
I will take executive action, and I will put in place the most comprehensive background check policy we've had. I will require the ATF to take the licenses of gun dealers who violate the law, and I will ban by executive order the importation of assault weapons.
I'm the only candidate on this stage calling for a ban and buyback of every single assault weapon in America.
Our major threat right now is what's going on in the Mideast with Iran.
We must have our military engaged.
We all talk about these things. I did it.
There's homeless people and people around our country who can't afford a home.
We do not talk enough about trans Americans, especially African American trans Americans.
Let's also not forget someone in the trans community, a trans female, is poor doesn't mean they shouldn't have the right to exercise that right to choose. And so I absolutely would cover the right to have an abortion.
Medicare for all guarantees every woman in this country the right to have an abortion if she wants it. Let me make a promise here. You ask about litmus test. My litmus test is I will never nominate any justice to the Supreme Court unless that justice is 100% clear he or she will defend Roe v. Wade.
We must begin impeachment now.
This man has reached into the psyche of the American people, and he has harnessed fear for political purposes. So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So sir, I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field, and, sir, love will win.
That's what we need to do as Democrats.